Welcome to the Data Mesh Learning Community's meetup. Today's topic is going to be becoming a data mesh engineer. Now, I think we all realize it's a pretty broad topic, so let me kind of set the stage for today's discussion. First off, as we know, data is the fuel of the modern enterprise. I don't need to say that too much to this crowd. We all know it's the foundation that enables better decision-making, improves operations, creates innovations, and delivers these outstanding customer experiences and outcomes that we're all looking for. Now, as a data mesh community, we probably understand core principles of technology quite well, but data mesh is implemented by real people. In fact, real data mesh engineers. And these people have some exceptional skills, but really, what are these skills? And obviously there's some technical skills, but what are the soft skills that are also needed to be successful? And along that lines, how are these skills built? Well, these are all questions that we're going to be answering today during today's session. We'll probably be touching on a variety of different topics related to that. Now, along the way, our hope is that you as a data mesh practitioner gain a few insights to help you better build and deploy your skills to your organization as they implement data products and data mesh. So that's our hope. Now, today, we have several members of the PayPal data mesh team that are going to share their insights based on some real world experiences. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. Lavina, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Okay. I am actually a solution architect in PayPal, and I build data mesh for my living. So just kidding, I have other things as well. So yeah, I work as a solution architect in PayPal, and in my day-to-day life, I design components of different products, data-oriented products. One of the major project I've been working on is data mesh, and it was really interesting to work on. So yeah.
Fantastic. Krithika, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, this is Kritika. I have been working as a lead software engineer, big data and data platform since about 1.5 years. And I have been involved in building a data mesh for PayPal again since the past 1.5 years. And some of my skill sets range from working on big data technologies, both batch and streaming, like Kafka, Hive, so on, and also on the cloud services. And the languages that I have predominantly used are Java, Python, SQL, very similar to what we have been using for big data and software engineering. And in addition to the technical skill sets, I have been involved in working and collaborating with multiple teams across the organization, some of them being business and some of them being enterprise teams. So we're all here today, and we would love to discuss our experiences with you. Thank you.
Fantastic, Krithika. Thank you. Jean-Georges, tell us what you do for a living, my friend.
Yeah, what am I doing for a living? Okay, so my title is Intelligence Platform Lead at PayPal, but I kind of self-identify as a software person, engineer, architect, or whatever. I had the pleasure of leading a great team, and you've got 2 members here to build and to design, build, and deploy in production a data mesh at PayPal. More recently, I also published this little book, Data Mesh for All Ages, and here you can see the Chinese and English version, all available on Amazon. That's not for a living, but you can contribute to my living by buying it. And I love sharing knowledge and around data mesh and technology and data in general. So I'm more than happy to be here and pretty excited to be once more with this fantastic group.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jean-Georges. Thank you, Lavina and Krithika. Now, real quickly here on an administrative note, each of these panel members are talking on their own behalf and not for their employer or clients. So now, as for me, my name is Eric Broda. I'm the president of Broda Group Software. It's a boutique consulting company focused on accelerating financial firms' enterprise data mesh journey. My team is currently working on 2 pretty big data mesh engagements. We're building a global payments mesh And we're also leading a team that's establishing a data mesh to support global management of climate data. But more importantly, it is my honor to be your panel host for today's discussion. So without any further ado, why don't we get started? So again, this topic, becoming a data mesh engineer. So I'm going to say, why don't we start with Lavina? So I think, Krithika, you gave us a pretty good background, but Lavina, tell us about your background and experience. When did you start working on data mesh? And kind of what are some of the things that have been going on relative to data mesh in your so far in your career?
Okay, so to give you a little background, like how I eventually landed up to this position is I started as a backend developer. Then I went and did work on data science and data engineering products together that involved building models and pipelines for the product, like end to end. And then I worked as a data scientist for some time, like projects that needed data scientist skills. Then some of the projects which I also needed CI/CD pipelines, software engineering, and because it involved computer vision and everything. So it was more of a combination of a data science, like data scientist, software engineering, data engineering, everything together. Which eventually, like when I landed up into the project of data mesh, the entire work history that I have from 2013 onwards actually helped me a lot in like that helped me a lot in order to get the vision of what actually is happening. So if I would have started as a data engineer, like from the scratch without much of an background of backend development for software engineering, or if I would have been just involved in Python, wouldn't have touched Java, C++, C#, MySQL, etc., it would have been very difficult for me to be able to envision this project and to design the components that are helping different parties that are using data mesh. So
Okay,
I think
perfect.
it's a combination.
Okay, great. So Krithika, before you did this data mesh stuff, it looks like Lavina had some data scientist experience, some software engineering. Did you have a similar background before you started this data mesh journey?
I had a background with software engineering and data engineering. So I was previously involved in building a platform for streaming data to process streaming in batch, as well as building microservices. So that experience of a combination of software and data engineering helped me understand and build a data platform and work with data engineering teams for data mesh.
Okay, so it's safe to say you both had some solid experience in software engineering, some data engineering, even data science experience, all of which I think is great. A great background for applying your skills and capability on data mesh. Now, let me just talk a little bit. I want to take a step back. You're obviously data mesh engineers, but what does your broader data mesh team actually look like? What are the roles in your data product team? Is there a platform team? Where's the data mesh engineer fit? Kind of paint the broader picture of what. And then Krithika, we'll start with you. What does the broader data mesh team look like?
To me, data mesh engineer is just an extension to a data engineer. Someone that works with data, someone that utilizes a data platform to be able to provide data to the business users or ML engineers or data scientists. And so our team comprised of data platform engineers as well as data engineers. The one addition to the team that we had was that was important to us was data product owner. So data product owner is the one that helps in coming up with the data contract. And he or she owns the domain and everything relating to that domain. So the roles that we have had are very similar to a traditional software engineering or a data engineering team. in addition to this one extra role of having a data product owner. So we had software engineers to build the platform, and we had data engineers to come up with the transformations and provide, make the data available to our end users.
Okay,
So,
Kritika, perfect. Now, Lavina, I'm not sure if are you on the same team as Kritika, or are you on a different part of the data mesh team?
So, in addition to what Kritika said, we also had we also had architects, like solution architects and data architects. The person who was a solution architect, like me, I used to interact with the product owner from different area, be it the consumer or the person who is going to construct the data contract, and then design the product and the entire pipeline. So as we already mentioned, that data mesh at PayPal is more of a microservice process. Like it's a microservice based, stateless architecture. So this was the design that we came up with the help with in collaboration with the tech leads, architects, both solution and data, and the product owners.
Okay. Now, I'm going to come to you, Lavina. So if you were to kind of summarize, in 30 seconds or less, what does a data mesh engineer actually do? What is the day in the life of a data mesh engineer? How would you answer that question?
So they do exactly the same things which is actually been done by a data engineer who transfers the data. He does ETL jobs, batch jobs, and everything, Spark, Kafka, everything, with additional twist to the extent where a little bit of software development is also envisioned. Like usually when you create an ETL pipeline, you don't think of microservices, right? But when you think of the process of filtering the data and creating a product which is needed by, and creating a pipeline which can be used again and again by the different different domains, basically, or the data products, then you have to like use that work in a redundancy. So there the data engineering work needs to be replicated. So there a little bit of software engineering comes to a play. So there we are doing exactly, a data mesh engineer does the same things, but a little bit of spices of
There you go.
software engineer.
I like it. Now, I want to kind of, Kritika, I want to drill down a little bit into that. One of the things I thought that PayPal actually recently released was the open source data product contracts, which I think was a fantastic event. And if I'm not mistaken, it's got over 200, maybe 300 stars already on GitHub. So this is something the community is really taking up. So first off, I want to give the team here kudos for that, because I think it was this team that actually put a lot of that together. So Kritika, with that in mind, like, tell me about how you as a data engineer and your team created these data contracts. What was the impetus for it, and how did the data engineer provide and craft that core artifact?
So when we started off, what you're seeing is many revised versions today. But when we started off, we started a data contract with the idea of having a contract between a producer and a consumer, and everything relating to what the input data sources are, what the output data sources are, and how we're going to monitor this data or meet the SLAs of this data that we are receiving. So initially, our data contract consisted of schema of input data sources, output data sources, and a few checks that we were performing, and the statistical scores that we were having as part of our observability process. Eventually, as we have evolved, as our platform evolved, we added more details with respect to ownership, stakeholders, SLAs, data policies that are part of the organization. Obviously having information with respect to the schema and what the description, the data dictionary, all of this were that were part of the version 1 were included as well. Today, the data contract that you see encompasses everything with respect to ownership, stakeholders, schema, data dictionary, SLA information, organizational policies. So, so the way the data contract is created is we work with the data product owner in coming up with what are the data sources that are required and how we're going to shape our resulting data sets. So here, the idea behind data mesh is very similar to how data engineering or big data projects have been working. It's just the shape of the data that changes based on how a data product owner curates the data contract and the final resulting tables.
Okay, perfect. So obviously now, Lavina, we've heard about these data contracts, but you mentioned also a few other things that a data mesh engineer does. You mentioned obviously you guys have a role in building the microservices architecture, and you obviously have a role in the establishment of the pipelines that allow the data products to talk to each other. Tell me a little bit about how. Tell me a little bit about what the skills and the techniques you used to in the architecture that you used to build those microservices in the pipeline. What are some of the data mesh engineering skills that you needed to put that together? Oh, yeah, I think you're on mute, Lavina.
Yeah. So basically, I would like to reframe your question a little, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
No problem.
Said how to become a data mesh engineer. I would rather put it out as how to build a data mesh team. Because you need a lot of people in there. You need a person who can envision data as a data, who's basically a data engineer. You need a software developer who is able to see the data as a product and a service. You need a product owner who has seen the software development, who has worked or has an experience of software development products, as well as a little bit of data product. You need a data architect, and you need a solution architect. You need all of these people. So and then there's a balance of the skills and the work that is being done. Like, okay, a data engineer, he will be more comfortable to develop ETL pipelines, do batch processes on Spark or Scala, whatever language he or she is comfortable to. But then the software developer mindset will come into the role, and they'll say, okay, why don't you just make it a trigger or something and reduce the redundancy, create a microservice out of it, stuff like that. So the skills on in a very broad way, if I could say, they're not anything additional that you need. It's just the visualization that you need at that some of the stuff that is mentioned in the Zamax book. You should be able to visualize that, and thanks to a leader like JZ, who was able to let us visualize something like that, so complicated, in much simpler words, so that team like Kritika and me and the entire team who are working together to build that were able to come together and bring forth a data mesh that is actually created out of no additional skills, but the same data engineering skills and a little bit of software development, which is very normal to understand, like oops concepts.
Okay. Now, so Kritika, let me build on that question. So Lavina said there's I'll paraphrase, software engineers, architects, a whole raft, a whole group of people. But let me ask specifically, what's the difference between a software engineer and a data mesh engineer?
So I would say data mesh engineer, again, is an extension to data engineering. One additional feature that we provide is having the QA or the observability inbuilt in the platform. Software engineer, again, comes with the same skill set as a data, I would say software engineer data platform. I think it's building that microservices for the data platform. The skill set between a software engineer and a data mesh engineer is, I would say, data mesh engineer encompasses a little bit of software engineering, wherein the engineer needs to understand the microservices and also probably build in case or support the data platform team. But data engineer and a data mesh engineer are very tightly in line. They're the ones that make the data available to the end users based on the transformations that the business requires.
Okay, perfect. Lavina, let me go to you now. So let's say I am a person, maybe 2 years out of university, college. I've done some software development. What are the skills that I should be looking to build if I want to be a data mesh engineer in the next year or two?
Okay. So given that you already have software development skills, so you must be aware of the languages like Java or Scala, Python, etc. And then you must be aware of like the stuff that is generally used, like abstraction, encapsulation, that helps in defining, an API based or like API based microservices, stuff like that. But then if you want to become a data mesh engineer, you need to be able to know how the data pipelines work, right? So this data pipeline work strategy needs, like, it's mandatory for a software developer to understand that and see data, not just a raw file that is sitting somewhere in the application DB, but to know how to make that raw file into a filtered, usable data for a data scientist and data engineers. So this entire process of transferring the data from a raw, unfiltered data, which is lying somewhere in the application DB, to some, cluster, say Redshift or any cluster, GKs, anything. So this entire steps that are needed to transform the data into filtered and the usable form. This is something which is crucial for a software developer who is 2 years or 3 years in the industry to know how, like, this is basic. So if he knows that, I think he's good to go.
Okay, perfect. Kritika, just
In addition,
what are your thoughts?
Could I add one other skill set? The other is collaboration and good communication skills. You would be working with a lot of business teams, infrastructure teams, enterprise teams, and it's important to be able to communicate and collaborate well.
Perfect.
That goes like without even saying. That like this thing goes without even saying. So for example, once we build, like, I'm just giving you an example how important the collaboration is, that once we build the data mesh, it was a very new and for some it was very complicated product or a design. But just because we were collaborating with people in order to get the stuff done, we collaborated to an extent that they started liking it. So within the collaboration itself, like, your work starts getting sold out.
Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna touch on that in a little bit more detail, because I think you've highlighted a key part where it's not just technical skills, but there's other soft skills. But I'm just gonna ask the next question to Jean-Georges, who is kind of the data mesh manager or executive, and he has a team of these data mesh engineers. So Jean-Georges, what is a data mesh engineer career path look like? Where should they start? And once they've been a successful data mesh engineer, where do they go?
That's a great question. Thanks, Eric. I think it starts at the data engineering. Okay, and if you think about what Jamak is saying as well, she says that, data engineers are kind of disappearing, or something that should not be a difference between data engineers and software engineers anymore. But I think it still starts at the data engineering level. Okay, so you need to understand what the data transformation is, what ETL is, what modeling is, etc. So when you add the skills, okay, so to get into becoming and building, basically when you're thinking about the output of or the outcome of a data engineer is being the kind of a data pipeline. The output of a data mesh engineer for me is a data product. Okay. And of course, the data engineer or the data mesh engineer is not in charge of saying, hey, I'm going to have my own SLAs, okay? But he work in conjunction with the data product owner. So that's one path to evolve as a data mesh engineer. You can become a data product owner, okay? You say, if you want to go towards a product side of the world, and you can then start building and having this very strong link with the business, okay, which is really required, and that's an evolution. Another evolution is data architect, okay. When you're thinking about the data quantum model and the data product, one of the key elements inside is the interoperable model you're exposing, okay. So if your model is not interoperable, you lose a lot of the benefits of the data product itself. So, and I think this is a skill that comes with data architecture. Okay, a lot of data engineers naturally start doing it, but I think this is also something as you mature that you will be more mastering. So that would be, I think, two outcome of, or two possible evolutions from for data mesh engineer, data product owner, and the data architect.
Okay, so I want to come back now to, well, thank you, Jean-Georges. Levine, I want to come back to you on the non-technical skills. Now, in Zhamak's book, she calls it, the data mesh is a socio-technical endeavor. Now, I found that the socio part, or more specifically, the organizational part, is actually, first off, it is as important, if not more important, than the technical capabilities, but it's actually a lot harder. So, Lavina, what are your thoughts on that?
See, I feel the technology behind the data mesh, to come up with a data mesh, it's not very hard. It's just the perception, how you see the entire stuff. Like, you are, for example, it's very easy for you to visualize stuff in 2D on your screen, but when it comes to 3D, you need to be a little creative, right? So this is what, like, when I was trying to understand data mesh from Zhamak's book and the conversations that we had within our team, this is what was my thinking, that you have to think in 3D or maybe 4D, right? And for a technical person, in order to make them understand this vision, it was easier. But for the end users, it was difficult, because sometimes they're just comfortable in their, day-to-day monotonous process, no matter how many times, how many glitches comes in. But, change, we say, it's very easy to say that change is the most permanent thing, but we know how resistant human beings are to changes. The same concept applies everywhere. And it was difficult, not just at technical level, to implement stuff and get approvals and all that in order to make them understand what actually we are doing. It was, when it was eventually done, it was really appreciated, but it was like, it was not a lot of work, but it was a repeated effort that we had to put to make them understand that how useful it is, see how it is reducing your workload, see how easy it is. So I think it's very true what it's written there.
Okay, Krithika, what are your thoughts?
Very similar to what Lavina said. Any change is tough to bring in, but so what helped us is collaboration and working together. So a lot of times when we were building the platform, a lot of time we have to go through the architecture approvals at the enterprise level. So initially when we began, not everybody understood why we were doing this or what purpose it would solve, but repeated collaboration and working with individual enterprise teams helped. And as I said, it wasn't just that, it was also working with the business teams. So it is important to bring in this mindset of not just the technical skills that are needed for engineering, but the product and good social skills are equally required to be able to pitch in the product and to bring in the users.
Okay, no, I like that. Lavina, tell me a little bit about you. I think you mentioned the word collaboration, or I can't remember if it was Kritika. Collaboration was a key success factor. Tell me how that worked, and maybe give me an example. It kind of brings it to life.
Okay, so I cannot tell you, but I'll give you an in general example.
Sure.
But there were some processes in the data mesh that needed triggers. Okay, a trigger sort of setup. So the team who was there are platforms, like there are relevant platforms to do relevant stuff in PayPal. So we had to go through that enterprise team for that particular trigger. Now we wanted to automate that trigger. We didn't want it to, do that trigger thing manually. We wanted to automate that trigger. And that came with additional requests or basically 1 or 2 tickets that need to be raised from that ticket, and or almost a sprint of work from that team, that enterprise team. So it was very difficult initially to, convince them that, okay, what we are doing here is I know it's a little extension of what you already do, but it's not that tough. We are just asking, like you do A for Apple, we are just asking you for A for maybe, Antarctica. It's just A only. So stuff like that. So eventually, after repeated collaborations and making them try to understand and not giving up, so we eventually had that automation.
Okay.
And that speeded up our process, like data mesh, that is speeded, like that changed the entire, that made our product like maybe 5 times more famous.
Oh, fantastic. I like that. Jean-Georges, I'm going to ask you a question here. So I'll broadly say it this way, or ask the question this way. Clearly, there's some organizational skills, perhaps the ability to understand the business, the ability to collaborate, the ability to sell, I suppose. If you were to provide some advice to, again, somebody 2 years out of college or university looking to become a data engineer, we know the technical skills are important. What advice would you give to that person? Say, if you want to be a data engineer, here are the organizational skills you need to think about.
I think you need to get into business. Okay, so it kind of relates very close to our older son just graduated from college, and is going to join a major American bank. And the thing is, you don't learn in college the business. You learn. You're very good at art skills. Okay, I think in the US compared to France, at least when I was in France, you learn also some soft skills. But I think what a big miss is still the business. So when you join PayPal, understand our products, okay, understand our portfolio of companies, and that's going to help you understand the outcome of your work. Okay, it's not just the output, but the outcome of your work as well. So don't yeah, you need to keep learning. Okay, that's some advice I give to youngster. I would say keep learning. It's unfortunately you choose a profession where you're going to have to learn all the time. Okay, and if you stop learning, it's so continue working, continue learning, but make it sure that what you learn is going to be also business oriented. Okay, so if you go in healthcare, understand healthcare, and healthcare in your country. Okay, as we can we can joke together, Eric. I mean, healthcare in the US versus France versus Canada is really different. Okay, so you really have to understand to get this context, so to make yourself more relevant in the context of your company, because the goal is not to build data products for the sake of building data product. Okay, it's the sake of building and bringing data to get better insight about the business, get a lower risk, get increase profitability, increase market share, whatever. Okay, you've got to understand what the outcome of your work is, not just the output.
Okay, perfect. Now, Lavina, let's go next question for you. Loosely speaking, what Jean-Georges is saying, which I strongly agree with, is you need to have some business grounding. You have to understand the context and what kind of outcomes you're trying to get to. But that requires a skill that I think not all engineers, software engineers, data mesh engineers have, and that's, I'll call it in quotes, sales skills. So when you think about your journey at PayPal or anywhere else, how did you sell as a data mesh engineer? How did you sell the concept? How did you get people energized? What skills did you need to change the behavior of the individuals that you're talking with?
Okay, so when we build data mesh, we were targeting to help a certain category of people, not certain like everyone associated to data, but then we categorize those people into different categories, like into different sets. Okay, there are one who are going to create the data products, and then there are one who are going to use the data products that are getting created. So the users have different sets of skills and the requirement, and the creators have different sets of skills and the requirement. Each sprint we dedicated to each group. And when we dedicated to that group, when we were interacting, when we dedicated sprints or a quarter to that particular group, we made sure that we are empathetic towards their problems, and we are involving them in, backward feedback. Like when we build it, we go to them, okay, are you okay with it? So when you have this kind of setup of, back propagation, feedback, etc., and you are empathetic towards their need, and eventually you give them, the interactions that you have with them, they see by the end of, okay, 3 or 4 sprints or something like that, they see, okay, all the conversations were not waste. They were, leading to somewhere which is helpful for me. So this path is going to be, this development of the relationship, development of the path of eventually delivering the product is something which was helpful. So this is, according to me, this is sales, the involvement from the scratch till the end. And the same goes with the creators. So when it comes to sales, I think it's not a one day, like you just carry a bag and you start selling after you build it. It's like you have to, as a salesperson, you have to involve in, at least in tech, you have to involve the person, the user, from the very beginning till the very end as a salesman, so that your end product has usability.
Okay. No, I agree strongly. The concept that I'm familiar with is in order to drive change in behavior in any organization, you obviously need to do the work, but you need to socialize it and communicate it. And that takes a lot of work. And sometimes the data, engineers view themselves as the doers as opposed to the communicators or socializers. If you were to offer Krithika some advice to somebody wanting to become a data mesh engineer, how do you balance that technical with what's the balance for you, and how do you balance that technical versus social versus, being able to sell, if you will?
So before I started this project, I was mostly a technical person. After working with JG and Kim, they brought about a very different perspective to how we worked. Technical skills apart, JG was um, he helped us come up with good documentation. It all started there, and JG is a pretty creative person, so, and a great storyteller. If you actually look at his videos, the way he introduces a concept, it's so easy. Just going by Data Mesh for All Ages, you know, if you just take a look at that book, you know that you're reaching out to kids. and it's so easy to learn something in about 5-10 minutes. So I think that skill set apart, I think we've had pretty good leaders guiding us and help us gain some of the art, some of the skills when it comes to the art of storytelling and being able to pitch a product to different stakeholders. Then comes when it comes to, if you're a part of a software engineer building the data platform, I would say learn the product sense and the impact that you're making to your users. That comes with, you build something, get the feedback from your users, and then work and evolve. So knowing understanding the kind of sense or product sense and the kind of impact you're going to create on your users, that's very important. That again comes with how you pitch your product and how you work with your users. And if you're working as part of the data transformations team, know the business, as JG and Lavina rightly mentioned. It's very important to know what your data product is going to do or how it is going to help before you even start developing or working on the product. So all of this requires, again, collaboration and being able to come up with your pitch about who you're catering to and what is the use of whatever you're doing. So, and then I think it all comes down to art of storytelling as well. You need to have some kind of creative skills to be able to grab the attention of your audience. So I think presentation skills, documentation, and continuous collaboration.
Fantastic. Now, Lavina, just real quickly, and then I'm going to take a question from the audience right after this. The word storytelling resonates very strongly. I say slightly different words, but they mean the same thing, which is, what is the narrative? What are what is the story you're trying to tell? And we know, what we've heard is that the data mesh engineer, in order to drive that change in behavior, needs to be a good storyteller. Okay, so Lavina, how do you become a good data mesh engineer storyteller?
Practice and practice and practice.
And listen
So,
to JG, apparently.
yeah, I am actually a person. I mean, I'm a camera shy person. I have I literally had stage fear, and I thought, okay, it's fine. I'm going to work as a, in the background. It's okay, but it's actually sometimes it's the push from your leaders, and it's a push for yourself. If you're working on something and if you think you're good at it, you should be able to sell it. So if you want to sell it, and eventually in the first attempt you're not good in rephrasing the words and making very long sentences to a short one, you need practice. So good storytelling needs imagination, good imagination, really good creativity, and a little practice for a person like me.
Okay, excellent. Now, that's a great answer. I'm going to ask a question from Rui. Hopefully I pronounced the name correctly. How is the person, I'll ask this to Krithika to start. How is the person that the data mesh engineer can reach out to get the business domain knowledge for building a semantic layer? Should the data mesh engineer be the owner of that knowledge? Is that part of the data mesh engineer toolkit?
The ownership, I think, is not just with respect to a data mesh engineer building the data transformation. It also, the main ownership lies with the data product owner that works with the business and brings the data in. So I think it's a combination, but predominantly lies with the ownership, predominantly lies with the data product owner.
Okay, Lavina, what do you think?
I kind of think what Kritika says is 100% right. So the entire concept of data domain is to share the information. And when it comes to semantic versioning and all that, I think it majorly is the product owners who decide whether this versioning is semantics is correct, not, etc., etc.
Okay.
I would add, Eric, there is that you're not building this thing in a vacuum. Okay, you're building it for someone. So your interface between your customer and the engineer is a data product owner, but the customer, the consumer of the data you're building, and the producer of the data you're building has a responsibility as well. It's a part of the same team. So the engineer should be able to identify those as stakeholders and be able to reach out to ask for questions. Like when you're defining the semantic layer or the meaning of some stuff.
No.
Data governance comes into place, where you need to be able to reach data governance.
Okay. Feel good. Rui has a second question, but I'm gonna extend it a little bit. It has to do with some new technologies that may or may not have to be in the data mesh engineers toolkit. So let me start with you, Kritika. Specifically, Rui is asking about graph databases. What role do they play, if any, in your mind with the data engineer, the data mesh engineer role? Is that something they should be picking up on?
If you're working with microservices, probably, but I wouldn't say that. You can start simple if you're building something, if you want to build a data mesh. And if you're starting out to build, you can use the same some RDBMS databases for your to save your data from your microservices or your APIs. And yeah, you could use GraphDB if at all you find the need for it, but you can, for the big data mesh, it can be simple Postgre or MySQL instances. And with respect to your data transformations, if it depends on what your data transformation layer is going to be. It could be cloud services, it could be on-prem services. It all depends on the use case and what your storage layer is going to be.
Okay, perfect. So if it makes sense, then use it. If it doesn't, there may be alternate solutions. Lavina, I'm going to ask another question, kind of related to that. And it's really about what is in the data mesh engineers toolkit. So we've heard a lot about OpenAI, ChatGPT, the large language models. So Lavina, if you're thinking about data mesh, becoming a data mesh engineer, does that play? Is that something that you ought to be thinking about? Does it fit into a data mesh engineer's tool belt? Where do you see that?
Okay, so if you talk about extending, so data mesh is basically a platform that provides you data products. Now, utilizing that data product or creating that data product can be automatized to any level, be it using a chat GPT also. So it depends that how much capacity you have to automate stuff or the end product use. For example, the search engine that you have at the end product, for example, if you do have it, then you can add a chat GPT, a bot sort of something who gives you, or that is capable to give you the exact requirement that, exact product that you're looking for, given that if there are like thousands and thousands of products on the UI, right? So yes, they do have a role to play in this, but again, it depends like how much capacity, how much in-depth you have in your product in there. But you can start, as Kritika said, you can start simple, like you can really start simple and then you can cascade it. That's what we did. Like we started simple and we built it for like next 6 months, the entire simple concept around it. And then we added additional products. Now also we participated in a competition in PayPal where we actually introduced Mesh GPT.
Yeah, I love it. And I won't ask you anything proprietary or anything, but how did it turn out?
Yeah, so the decision is still pending in there. Documents are in, but it was taken with a lot of enthusiasm.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'll tell you, we are at time. So I'm just going to close with a few questions. Well, one last question, I suppose, for each of you. We'll start, Krithika, with you. Throughout your career, and now as a having arrived as a data mesh engineer, any lessons learned, advice for the audience, perhaps that we did not cover that you'd like to offer? I think you're on mute, by the way.
Sorry. Yeah, I think we covered a lot in the previous discussion and this one as well. But lessons learned is have a product sense. It's equally important to have soft skills and working on communication as much as your technical skills, and understand the business. Ultimately, you're building a product for your business users. You can just go about building whatever you want to with the massive amount of data that we have, like in PayPal, but know what your business needs. So I think, yeah, these are our 3 takeaways.
Excellent.
My 3 takeaways.
Perfect. Lavina, what are your thoughts? Any advice that we might have missed?
It's more or less same as what Krithika said. It's know your users, know the business, consider data as a product, not just, data points lying somewhere in the data and in the application DB. They like, you can really do wonders with that application DB data. The other thing is sales skills, soft skills, and a lot of practice. And of course, a very important skill that Krithika mentioned previously is storytelling. So maybe like that's something I learned from JG, is that you can really tell really complicated stuff in a very simple animation.
Very good. So JG, as the eminent storyteller in this crew here, I'll give you the last word. Anything we might have missed? What is your advice to that college student? Let's say it was your son, perhaps, who just is entering the workforce. Let's say that person's been in there for 2 years and they want to become a data mesh engineer. What advice would you give as a closing remark here? Oh,
Learn Java.
there we go. I can hear you now. Learn Java. I know there's more. I know there's more you want to say.
I think it's a very interesting world. I think I'm really convinced that the future of data engineering is going through some kind of data mesh. Okay, maybe not this iteration, but the next or the evolution or something. We need to change the way we've been doing with data. So as you're young and not completely your brain is still alive and not completely atrophied by dozens of years or the tens of years of experience. Embrace data mesh. Look at it, and this advice is also for more senior people. Okay, it doesn't have to. It's a the one thing when I discovered data mesh and read the papers from Zhamak, she was saying it's a revolution. I said, come on, Zhamak, this is not a revolution. It's just an evolution of everything. But I realized that over time, that people that have been in purely in data engineering for 20, 25, 30 years, it is actually a revolution. Okay, so be ready to embrace it, because it's really there. Okay, whether look at the data mesh learning community. Okay, when I joined, we were like under 5,000 people, and I think like I was still okay, and now we're close to 8,000 people. Okay, the number of since I've posted on my blog at jgp.ai some articles on data mesh, my traffic has almost gone tenfold. So there's a really big interest in data mesh. The industry is going there, so embrace it. Okay, go there, and the key, I think, is really data contract is one key, data product is one key. But to make a data product, you need to understand the product you're building. So you're a product owner, you're owning something, you're part of a business. Okay, so that's my advice to young and old people.
I love it. So let me first off say thank you to the panel participants, Lavina, Krithika, and Jean-Georges. Here's just a real quick summary. Here's what I heard. So here's my advice as I parse through the stuff that my eminent colleagues here have mentioned is first off, data mesh may not be revolutionary, evolutionary. It's somewhere kind of in the middle of those. But here's the thing, is it's a change in behavior, okay? And anytime you want to change a person's behavior, let alone an organization's behavior, it is something that is going to take time and patience. And, it takes the technical skills, absolutely. We've talked a little bit about those. You've seen we haven't necessarily emphasized the technical skills because in many respects they're table stakes, but it's those softer skills around understanding the business, understanding how to communicate, and as we've heard loud and clear, being able to tell a story. Those are the skills and capability that will help you start your data mesh, but it'll also let you socialize, sell it, communicate it, so you can continue to its logical outcome, which would be data products across the entire organization. So once again, to my panel members, Lavina, Krithika, and Jean-Georges, thank you very much for your wonderful insight. And I look forward to having further panels with you folks in the future. So with that in mind, I will say goodbye to the audience. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us, and hope you come back for future sessions. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.